Key West claims 25,000 residents and 150 million visitors a year. Tourism is huge, something for everyone. Lodging is expensive, but most everything else seemed pretty reasonable. We expected to find a lot of tourist traps, but we really didn't. Plenty of good food, drink, and nightlife, lots of live music. There are shops and studios of all kinds. You can easily find historical places including President Truman's little Whitehouse and Ernest Hemmingway's house, which is full of six-toed cats. There's some interesting historical twists like the Key West chickens and the Conch Republic, but I'll get to more on that in a bit. The place varies from raucous to tranquil. We saw fireworks, parades, creative activities like bed races. We met fellow tourists and locals, including a few interesting characters. You can visit famous locations like the southernmost point and see famous sunsets at Mallory Square. Just about any water-related activity you can think of is readily available. There are several beaches and parks. You can get to Key West by water, by air, or by road. Carolyn flew directly to Key West. I flew to Miami and rode from there. At the start of the 20th century, Key West was only accessible by boat. In 1905, Henry Flagler began expanding his Florida East Coast Railroad the additional 156 miles to Key West. The Overseas Railroad began operation in 1912. It remains the most ambitious engineering feat ever undertaken by a private citizen. Today, Pigeon Key hosts a restored railroad camp from that era. At the time, most goods traveled by ship, and the Straits of Florida was a major route. Shipwrecks were a weekly occurrence on the barrier reefs off Key West. By law, the first person to reach the wreck owned the spoils. The railroad allowed the goods to be shipped out, and Key West became the richest place in the country per capita. Around the same time, the state of Florida built State Route 4A to connect Key Largo with the mainland, and built a separate section of 4A to connect the lower keys together. A ferry ran between the two sections. In 1933, the state sought federal funds to complete the roadway. The Federal Emergency Relief Administration, which was part of President Roosevelt's New Deal for recovery from the Depression, began work. In 1935, a Category 5 hurricane devastated the area and severely damaged the railroad. Key West went from the richest place per capita to the poorest. While searching for a means to recover, local leaders learned that any country which surrendered to the United States was eligible for foreign aid. Key West seceded from the Union, declaring itself the Conch Republic, and immediately surrendered. It failed to get any foreign aid. The state bought the rights to what remained of the railroad, and with federal support, converted the railroad beds and bridges into roads. The resulting overseas highway extended U.S. Route 1 all the way to Key West. Tourism in the Keys has been alive and well ever since. I've wanted to travel the overseas highway ever since I first learned about it. At the time, the highway's 7-mile bridge was the longest bridge in the world. It was an engineering marvel, dubbed the eighth wonder of the world. The ride from Miami to Key West, which is just under 160 miles, took me 3.5 hours. I was told it can be much longer during busy times. U.S. Route 1 is the longest north-south road in the country, stretching almost 2,400 miles from the Canadian border in Maine to the southernmost part of the continental United States in Florida. The Overseas Highway, which runs from Key Largo to Key West, makes up the last 113 miles of U.S. Route 1. There are 42 bridges connecting 43 keys, so you certainly get some nice water views. Significant sections of the road are through business districts. Some other sections are through wildlife areas where fences attempt to keep the local creatures and vehicles protected from each other. We did encounter one deer on the road. The road is 1 lane each way in many places and widens to 2 lanes each in others. Speed limits vary between 55 and 35, 45 being the most common. Speed limits are definitely enforced, but there are lower speed limits in some locations at night. Once you get to Key West, especially the Old Town section, it's full of pedestrians, scooters, bicycles, golf carts, motorcycles, cars, trucks, and RVs. The whole key is only 1.5 miles wide by 3.5 long. Old Town is only a small portion of that. We were able to walk everywhere. We stayed at the La Conca Hotel in the heart of the action on Duval Street, although we didn't spend much time in the room. There was plenty of food, drink, and nightlife to be enjoyed. There were shops to visit and a souvenir shirt to be found. There's a lot more to Key West. On the 90-minute on and off trolley tour, which provides a worthwhile overview, we learned about the Key West chickens, among other things. Europeans brought chickens for food. Cubans brought cocks for fighting, but released them when cockfighting was outlawed. Key West chicken is the result of the mix. They're protected and roam freely. There's other local inhabitants too. We spent an afternoon at the beach at Fort Zachary Taylor State Park. Snorkeling around the rocks was great and easy to access. Carolyn gave it a thumbs up. Did you enjoy your day at the beach?
I did.
70 miles out into the Straits of Florida is the Dry Tortugas. It's the least visited of all the national parks, probably due to its limited access. The ferry runs once a day and books up well in advance. You can also get there by seaplane or private boat with limited dockage. There's very limited primitive camping available. Most of the 100 square mile park is underwater, with barrier reefs forming a natural harbor. Fort Jefferson, built on Garden Key in the 19th century and preserved to this day, protected then critical U.S. shipping interests through the Straits of Florida. In addition to a historical tour, there are beaches, coral reef snorkeling, and an amazing variety of migratory birds. Unfortunately, seas were rough the day we went due to a storm the day before, so the snorkeling wasn't at its best. It was still a fun day. On the way back, flying fish put on a great show. I find it interesting that Cadillac Mountain, near the northern end of Route 1, is one of the first places the sun rises in the U.S. And Key West, at the southern end of Route 1, is known for its legendary sunsets. There are several sunset cruises available from Key West. It seems strange since there are great sunset views from Mallory Square and Fort Zachary Taylor Park. But several people recommended taking one. We're both glad we did. As the saying goes, all good things must come to an end. It was time to ride home and get ready for our next adventure. I'll list some of the places we liked below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.